So I hope you have the next 30 minutes or so to spend with me as we go over this. So let me paint a scenario. It's late. The house is quiet in that uneasy way that tells you something's off. You glance at the clock, 10:47. Curfew was at 10:30. Your stomach drops. You try to stay rational. Traffic, a quick stop. But the longer the silence stretches, the more your brain starts filling in the blanks. Then you feel the anger and the fear because both flood in at once. You pick up your phone, type a message, delete it, type it again, finally send it, nothing. And somewhere between the worry and the frustration, a sentence flashes through your mind. We have talked about this 100 times. And that's usually the line that sets it off. Because now it's not just about the rule, it's about all the times before, all the effort, and all the fear that this is the start of something worse. The front door finally opens. You hear footsteps, a bag drop. You're halfway down the hallway before you've decided what you're going to say. So today we're going to talk about how to respond to broken rules effectively, what gets in the way, and steps to help you get better at responding. So let's talk first about why we react. When a rule breaks, it doesn't just threaten order, it tends to threaten safety. And it tells our body something's wrong. So our nervous system does what it's designed to do. It defends. So your heart races, your tone sharpens, and before you even register it, you're in lecture mode, trying to force understanding into a brain that isn't listening. And here's the irony. The more right you are, the less effective you become. Because when you lead with fear, they only hear threat. And it's not defiance, it's biology. Their brain floods with adrenaline, the same as yours. Now you're two people in fight or flight, both convinced the other is the problem. Remember, every broken rule carries a hidden message. Sometimes it's impulse, sometimes it's loneliness, sometimes it's a small rebellion against the weight of growing up, and sometimes it's just bad timing. But when we react fast, we miss the message completely. We end up treating the behavior like a verdict instead of a signal. Change needs oxygen, and oxygen comes from space and pause. Now, most people think pause means stay calm, but calm is internal. When I say pause, I'm talking about internal and external. The internal pause is what you do inside your body, breathing, noticing, not letting emotion drive your next sentence. The external pause is what you do in the world, stopping the argument, slowing the conversation, saying, "We're not doing this right now. We'll come back to it later." Now, that sentence might feel like giving up. It's not. It's authority in slow motion. It tells your team, this matters, but we're going to handle it with clarity, not chaos. Think of the pause like the clutch in a car. It disengages the gears just long enough to shift smoothly, and if you skip it, you end up grinding metal. And that's really what most parent-teen conflict sounds like, grinding metal. Two people forcing motion when really what's needed is release. When you pause, you're not avoiding the issue. You're creating the space where reason can return, and that space changes everything. What's happening biologically also matters. During conflict, the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, fires off, flooding the body with cortisol. And the prefrontal cortex, the part that handles empathy, logic, and problem solving, goes offline. You can't lecture your teen into reflection any more than you can yell them into calm. You have to wait for their brain to come back online. That's what the pause accomplishes. It lowers your own stress signals first, and your steadiness becomes the safety signal to help them think again. That's why I say the pause isn't weakness, it's biological strategy. But let's be honest, pausing feels terrible. It feels like doing nothing when everything in you screams, do something, because action feels like control, and punishment feels like closure, and silence, that just feels like uncertainty. But the truth is, you can't control what you don't understand. And you can't understand what you won't slow down long enough to see. The pause isn't doing nothing, it's doing something deliberate. It's creating visibility. So let's go back to that hallway. The door's just closed. You're standing there, heartbeat in your ears, half a lecture on your tongue. You could unload it. Or you could breathe once, then twice, and say quietly, I'm glad you're home safely. Let's talk tomorrow. That single line changes the entire shape of the night. It shifts you from enforcer to leader. It gives both nervous systems a way back to center. And that's what leadership looks like in adolescence, not control, but containment. To your teen, that pause lands louder than any speech. It says, I can be upset without abandoning you. It says, you're safe enough here for me to think before I act. That's a message they rarely get from the world, and over time, it starts to register as trust. Trust doesn't mean agreement, it means predictability. Our teens start to learn when I mess up, my parent doesn't explode, they stabilize. And that's how your authority becomes influence. So go back to the scenario. The next morning, you knock on their door, you invite them down for breakfast. They come down, your tone is even, and you say, you missed curfew. We need to talk about that. For now, driving other than to school is on pause, and we'll revisit this at the end of the week. No moral lecture, no humiliation, just a boundary delivered from clarity. That's the first step of an off ramp. Life slows down long enough for both of you to recalibrate. They lose access, not to punish, but to create space, the kind that invites reflection. You step back from over-talking, over-fixing, over-explaining, and it becomes a shared pit stop, so to speak, both of you catching your breath after emotional overdrive. Punishment teaches avoidance. Pause teaches awareness. When you pause, your teen's brain associates correction with calm authority instead of fear, and that's how discipline turns into learning. They start to internalize the rhythm. Rule breaks, life slows down. Reflection happens, connection repairs. It's repetition of that cycle that rewires behavior, not reactivity. But honestly, there's a reason parents get reactive. Let's name what's underneath all of this. Primarily fear. Fear of losing influence, fear of your teen slipping away, fear that one broken rule means you failed as a parent. That fear is real, but it can't drive what happens because fear-driven parenting creates compliance, not confidence. And confidence is what your teen needs to navigate the world when you're not there. So when you pause, you're not just calming the moment, you're training their nervous system to trust steadiness more than control. That's legacy work. So let's be practical. What does it look like? Here's what happens next in most families once they start using the pause. The first time you try it, it feels weird. The second time, it feels forced. But by the third or fourth, it starts to feel a little more natural because both of you are learning the same thing, which is how to stay connected while slowing down. The pause leads to an off-ramp. And here's the important part, the off-ramp has to lead to an on-ramp, and that on-ramp brings you both back into movement with less noise and more clarity. That's the rhythm we'll unpack next, because this isn't just a theory thing, it's a choreography that keeps family from spinning apart. You can think of the off-ramp as a structured slowdown, the moment when you both agree, spoken or not, that life can't keep moving at full speed until you understand what just happened. Sometimes it's short, like a cooling breath. Sometimes it lasts days, but it always means the same thing. We're pressing pause on what's normal until we're ready for what's next. So imagine this. It's Saturday morning. Your teen promised to finish a project before going out with his friends. You walk by and see the half-done work, phone in hand, blank expression on his face that says, I forgot. You feel it start, the surge, the disappointment, the old tape that says, I can't believe we're here again. but you've practiced this. You take that internal pause. You say evenly, looks like the project isn't done. Tell you what, take care of it before you head out. No speech, no sarcasm, just clarity. When they push back, because they will, you stay with the boundary. This isn't punishment, this is the off ramp. We're just slowing things down until what matters most gets done. They might roll their eyes, maybe mutter something under their breath, but the whole tone of the moment is different because it's firm without combustion. You don't take the bait. You only focus on the limit you're enforcing. Project completed first before anything else. That's what a healthy off ramp sounds like in daily life. It doesn't get sidetracked in arguments and power struggles. An off ramp isn't an exile, it's the signal that the system needs to reset. And because you don't fill the silence with lecture, they actually get to feel the friction of their choice. And that friction is what builds accountability, not guilt, but awareness. Sometimes the off ramps are bigger, like when a rule break touches safety related to substance use, for example. So saying, for now, social plans pause. We need to rebuild some trust before things go back to normal. You're not shaming them. You are letting natural cause and effect play out inside connection. The relationship keeps moving even when the privileges don't. So dinner still happens, you still say goodnight, you still have conversation, life continues, but with the pause in place in the area needed. That's how you keep love alive inside consequence. And then comes the middle space, the quiet, awkward stretch of the off ramp. Nobody likes this part. This is the part where you start second guessing. Should I lighten up? Should I push harder? Are they even learning anything? And that discomfort is exactly where growth happens because both of you are sitting in the same silence. You're learning restraint, they're learning reflection. The relationship is learning tolerance for tension. It's kind of like emotional physical therapy. It hurts before it helps. But if you can hold that steady ground, kind tone, and firm limit, the message will start to land. Not, you're in trouble, but more, we're in a process. Then, at some point, something small shifts. They ask, can we talk? Or they follow a rule without you reminding them. Or they just stop bristling when you enter the room. And that's your signal. The engine's cooled. It's time to find the on ramp. Reentry isn't about pretending it never happened. It's about bringing what you learned back into motion. So you might start with, it kind of feels like things are calmer now. Let's figure out what makes sense going forward. You talk about what worked, what didn't. You agree on one concrete change, a plan, a time to check in, a new boundary that's clear and realistic. Then you name the reentry out loud. Okay, we're back on the road. That naming matters. It closes the loop and it lets them feel the reset in real time. Now, sometimes the on ramp comes in smaller ways, like a tiny joke shared after days of tension, or a request for help that's genuine, not manipulative. Those are micro on ramps. Take them. You don't need a grand apology before you reconnect. You just need a willingness to move again. Every small reentry builds the muscle of repair. But maybe you're thinking, what if they don't take it? What if they stay closed off? Then you keep the door visible. You hold the limit. You might say, I'm here when you're ready to talk. That's not detachment, it's invitation with structure. Because when you chase them, they resist. When you stay available without pressure, they test your consistency. And consistency is what eventually earns their trust. Now, there's another side to ramps people forget. Parents need them too. Every time you overfunction, over-explain, over-help, over-fix, you burn yourself out. You start to confuse effort with effectiveness. And that's when you could use an off-ramp. You can literally say, I need to step back for a day. I'm getting reactive. I'll come back around when I'm a little clearer. You're modeling adult regulation right there. You're teaching that space isn't abandonment, it's maintenance. And when you come back steady, Your teen feels the difference. They sense the ground under them again. And that is co-regulation at work. Off ramps aren't just about slowing down behavior, they're about slowing down emotion. That's where insight can catch up to experience. And the on ramp, that's where practice begins. You don't need perfection, you just need some sense of the rhythm. And here's how it looks across time. Early on, the pauses feel clunky. You'll both trip over each other trying to stay calm while the old patterns tug at you. But with repetition, something subtle starts to happen. Conflicts shorten. Recovery comes faster. You start skipping entire fights because the system knows how to downshift before it blows out. That's not magic, that's repetition, working in your favor instead of against you. Let me tell you about a mom I once worked with. We'll call her Dana. Her 16-year-old, we'll call him Leo, kept missing deadlines, and every time Dana found out, she'd spiral, raise her voice, threaten to take away Leo's phone, and then collapse into guilt. It was exhausting for both of them. So we built a pause plan, and the next time she got an email from a teacher, she simply texted him at school, "Got this email, we'll talk after dinner." When he walked in that night, she was ready, and she could have her calm tone, simple boundary. "You missed the deadline again, so the off ramp this week is no new activities until your work's caught up. If you want some help figuring out how to, I can help you make a plan." No yelling, no power struggle. By Friday, he'd finished everything. She restored privileges with one line. "You handled that really well. I'm proud of you. Feels like we're back on track." He shrugged like it was nothing. But 2 weeks later, he brought it up himself and said to her, "You know what? You were different. And it actually helped me." That's the effect of process over punishment. It takes a few reps, but it rewires how both sides respond to stress. This rhythm doesn't eliminate conflict, it just changes what conflict means. So instead of proof that something is wrong, it becomes evidence that growth is happening. And once you can stop seeing rule breaking as catastrophe, you can start seeing it as communication. And here's something not many people say out loud. Adolescence is supposed to push us to our edges. It's supposed to test our ability to hold tension without snapping. Every off ramp we create, every on ramp we guide, is us practicing that tolerance. You're learning to lead without rescuing, to steady without smothering. And that's how your teen learns self control, not from lectures, but from being around someone who embodies it. Now, sometimes parents ask me, "But shouldn't there be consequences?" And my answer is absolutely. But consequences without process just create resentment. A true consequence sits inside the pause. It's held with clarity. It serves a function. It says, "This stops for now," not "You're bad." It's structure with safety, not fear. Punishment says, "You pay until I feel better." Consequence says, "We pause until you're ready to repair." And only one of those builds character. So there are some scenarios that I'll go over with you now. What do you do when you blow the pause? There will be nights when you forget everything I've just talked about. You'll react before you breathe. You'll say too much, too sharply, too fast. And halfway through the argument, you'll hear yourself, tone clipped, words sharper than you meant. And you'll think, "Oh, I did it again." That's the moment to stop. You don't have to power through to prove your authority. You can stop mid sentence and say, "You know what? I need to pause. I'm too upset to talk right now." That one act models more maturity than the lecture you were giving ever could. Because what your teen sees is not perfection, they see self control in action. They see an adult who can own the moment instead of doubling down on it. That's what emotional leadership looks like in a real family. Stopping yourself when the old pattern wants to take over. All right, so what do you do when they reject the whole process? Because sometimes they're not going to meet you halfway. You'll call for the pause and they keep pushing. They'll mutter whatever, slam the door, or send that parting shot meant to sting. You'll be tempted to chase them down, to finish the conversation just so it doesn't hang there. Please don't. The off ramp works even if you're the only one who takes it. You can't make them regulate, but you can refuse to match their chaos. You can say quietly, I'm not doing this while we're both angry. We'll try again later. And then you stop and you walk away, not out of defeat, but out of discipline. It's a strange kind of strength, the kind that doesn't really make noise, but it's the one they'll remember when they need it the most. Now, another scenario is when the pause lasts too long, because sometimes the pause stretches into avoidance. You tell yourself you're giving space, but days go by and you realize you're still tiptoeing around each other. That's not healing, that's hiding. And if silence starts to feel heavy, break it gently by saying something like, we've both cooled off, let's talk about what happens next. You don't need a big apology scene, just movement, because connection can't breathe in indefinite stillness. The goal isn't endless pause, it's meaningful reentry. Now, the flip side is when you try to come back too soon, when you jump back too quickly. They smile once or do one chore without being asked, and you think, okay, we're fine now. And then you drop the structure, loosen the limit, and within days the pattern returns. That's not manipulation on their part. That's impatience on ours. We want to believe everything's solved because we hate the tension of the in between. But the in between is where growth happens. So the next time you feel tempted to skip ahead, say it out loud. Part of me wants to move on fast, but I think we need a little more time to practice this. That line teaches pacing, something most adults still haven't mastered. All right, so what do you do when the rule gets broken again? Because you'll go through all of this and one day they will do it again. The same rule, the same argument, the same sinking feeling. And that's when you'll remember relapse is part of learning. You're not back at zero, you're back in practice. You can say, looks like we need another off ramp. We'll slow things down again until this makes sense. No lecture, no threat, just process. Every repetition strengthens the pattern of recovery. They start connecting the dots. When I act out, life slows down. When I take ownership, life moves again. That's the architecture of accountability. Now, there are always times when we're the ones who break the rule. We check the phone we promised we wouldn't. We raise our voice after swearing we'd stay calm. We impose a consequence we know we have no shot at enforcing, and they catch us in the moment. And that's when it's our time to show what accountability looks like in adulthood by saying something like, you're right, I didn't handle that how I said I would. I'm going to go reset and I'll try again. No excuses, no defensiveness, just ownership. That's how integrity gets modeled. You're not losing authority, you're demonstrating it. Because if accountability only ever flows one way, it's not accountability, it's control. So here's the thing, repair is the real lesson. Repair doesn't require perfect words, it requires willingness. And sometimes repair sounds like, I shouldn't have spoken to you that way, or I was harsh because I was scared. Sometimes it's smaller, making breakfast the next morning or knocking before entering the room again. Small acts of steadiness that say, we're still connected even after the conflict. That's what teens remember. Not the exact rule, not the lecture, but whether the relationship held. Repair teaches that rupture is survivable, and that lesson matters more than any consequence you could design. There will be stretches when you're the only one doing the work, where you feel like you're pausing and reflecting and offering repair, and they meet you with silence, sarcasm, or eye rolls. That doesn't mean it isn't working, it just means that shame is still in their way. Most teens don't know how to re enter without feeling weak. So when they hover nearby or make that passing joke or ask what's for dinner, That's their version of an on ramp. Take it. Don't demand the apology you wish they'd give. Just re enter because the relationship's resilience matters so much more than the formality of the repair. Now, sometimes the rule break exposes something bigger, something like anxiety, depression, or substance abuse, something that you basically can't solve alone. And that's when the off ramp needs professional scaffolding. That's when you can say, this is bigger than what we can handle alone as a family. Let's bring in someone to help us figure this out. It's not losing control, that's strengthening the structure. You're teaching your teen that seeking help is a form of responsibility, not failure. And you're modeling humility, the courage to admit when the system needs more support. And that's how you build long term influence. Now, here's something. After enough ruptures, it's not just trust in your teen that takes a hit, it's trust in yourself. You start wondering, do I even know what I'm doing? That's the moment to take your own off ramp as a parent. Step back, reflect, ask what worked, what didn't, what do I want to try differently? Then pick one small adjustment. That's it. Confidence isn't actually a feeling, it's the accumulation of clear, deliberate choices. Every pause, every reset, every conscious reentry adds up. And that's how steadiness rebuilds after doubt. Over time, something shifts. Your teen breaks fewer rules, not because they're scared, but because they're learning self correction. And when they do break one, it doesn't spiral. The repair comes faster. You start recognizing the pattern. Rule breaks aren't signs of failure, they're checkpoints in development, and each one asks the same question: can we stay connected while addressing what's real? That's the work. That's what prepares them for the world outside your home, where consequences and relationships coexist every day. When you pause before reacting, you're teaching your teen that emotion and restraint can share the same space. When you hold the off ramp, you're teaching that limits protect, not punish. When you create the on ramp, you're teaching that responsibility rebuilds trust. And when you repair, you're teaching that love can survive conflict. Those lessons outlast every rule in the house. They become internal maps your teen will use long after they've moved out. That's the hidden curriculum of parenting, what they learn from how you handle the hardest moments. So here's your challenge for the week. The next time your teen breaks a rule or even just pushes a limit, pause. Not just internally, pause the moment itself. Say, I'll come back to this later." Then take the time you need. Breathe. Feel the adrenaline settle. Let the fog clear. And when you're ready, re enter with one question: what needs to change so we can move forward? That's it. One question that replaces punishment with process. One sentence that invites ownership instead of shame. And if you forget and react before you pause, just repair afterwards. Oh, I lost it again. Let's start over. That's the work. That's parenting in motion. If this resonated with you, take a second to like the video, share it with another parent who needs a little breathing room, and subscribe for more conversations like this. If you want personal guidance, someone to help you build steadiness and structure while keeping connection intact, schedule a free 30-minute consult with me. The link is in the description. Because the truth is, no one gets through adolescence without some rupture, and we can all certainly learn how to repair. Have a good evening, and thanks for joining me.